Trust Bank details plans for a public float with state government backing. A 23-year-old Triabunna man found guilty of attempted murder, and Tasmania's police commissioner tells why police didn't shoot Martin Bryant. Good evening, I'm Tom Payne. A public share float will see Tasmanians owning 41% of the Trust Bank under an innovative new corporatisation plan. Although the plan would see a foreign bank take a controlling interest, both the bank and the state government have moved to assure the public the bank's headquarters will remain in Tasmania.
The Trust Bank has been negotiating with the state government over changes to the bank's structure for almost 2 years. Now they've finally come up with a plan they say will boost its capital base and competitiveness. The bank's 800 staff and 150,000 customers will be given first option on 41% of the bank's shares. An overseas bank or Australian financial institution will be sought to buy 49%. The bank will retain 10%.
First of all, it'll be guaranteed by legislation that the board would be resident here in Tasmania.
The legislation provides the government with 16% of the proceeds from the bank sale. A new foundation will receive the rest, believed to be up to $160 million, part of which the government will receive over the next 10 years.
And the income will be distributed 50% back to the Parliament on the basis that it retires state debt, and 50% into charity and other institutions throughout Tasmania.
The Trust Bank is hoping for a speedy passage of the legislation through Parliament and the Upper House, saying lengthy political debate could deter international interests.
We believe that they're moving in the right direction.
I'm pleased that the bank's board has now addressed those issues and is moving towards corporatisation.
However, the main hurdle could be the Legislative Council.
Well, I'm always loath to predict what the Legislative Council might or might not do.
I think we're better off to entrench the long history the Trust Bank has established here in state ownership, and at least keep that in Australian ownership.
It's hoped the legislation will be passed by May. Tony Chambers, WIN News.
Why did police not shoot Port Arthur gunman Martin Bryant at the scene of the massacre? That's the question Tasmanian Police Commissioner Richard McCready said had been the most asked since April last year. He made the revelation at a national briefing in Melbourne today.
The chief executive of the Port Arthur site told of the bitter divisions between those staff who'd returned to work and those who stayed away after the massacre.
If we're in Melbourne or Hobart or Sydney, I would have picked up all the staff and put them in the bus and sent them somewhere, never to return.
But in the tiny peninsula community, this wasn't possible. Mr. Coombs told too of the agony he suffered daily as he passed floral tributes on the roadside, and of sabotage of computer equipment by angry staff, resulting in his breakdown.
All of a sudden I just realised my memory was gone.
Tasmania's police chief told the conference his officers were right not to shoot and kill Bryant. Mr. McCready said the most common question about the police action on that day was why they didn't kill Bryant. He said people must realise it isn't the police's role to be judge and executioner. The police chief said it was up to the police to take people into custody and to bring them before court, not for people like Bryant to die in a hail of bullets or with what they perceive as any hero status. Jeremy Lassick, WIN News.
A Triabunna man has today been convicted of attempting to murder an 18-year-old woman last July. The jury took less than 5 hours to find 23-year-old Neville Roy Arnold guilty of the crime.
Emotions spilled over at the Supreme Court today. Arnold's family visibly upset with the jury's guilty verdict.
It's okay. It's okay, Albert. Go on, you two. I'll give it to you. Go on, mate.
But relief for the family of 18-year-old Melissa Lester. The jury took 4.5 hours to determine it was Arnold who stabbed Miss Lester. In evidence, the court heard Miss Lester had spent the night of July 6 last year drinking with her friends, but the night ended at Arnold's house where he told her she owed him sex for smoking his drugs. Miss Lester ran away, but Arnold caught her, stabbing her several times. The Crown today asked Justice Seaman to take into consideration the physical damage that Miss Lester is suffering, including some loss of eyesight. Arnold's defence counsel Colin Brown told the court Arnold had expressed empathy for Miss Lester, and prior incidents of violence only included clashes with police and damage to property. Arnold will be sentenced on Thursday. Tony Chambers, WIN News.
Tasmania's politicians are starting where they left off last year. On top of the agenda, Legislative Council reform. At the opening of Parliament this afternoon, the government's legislative plans for the year were outlined.
All the trademarks of a typical opening of Parliament today, the three parties using the first day to set the session's agenda and a plea for continued cooperation.
The government is keen to continue such processes wherever possible and wherever appropriate, and the rights of non-government members will continue to be respected and acknowledged.
Well, the cooperative approach so far has delivered a record low in sitting days.
I think Labor should throw away the old adversarial mode and rather say how can they be more constructive.
There were no real surprises when Sir Guy Green outlined the Rundle government's plans. The Governor's speech put Legislative Council boundary reform firmly back on the agenda for this year. Bills to ensure one vote, one value, and to change the power of the Legislative Council's ability to block budgets to be introduced to the lower house shortly.
That'll be the most important thing, I think, on the agenda to begin with, is to bring about a resolution of that difficulty.
Also revealed a plan to draft legislation to control dangerous weapons other than guns, the introduction of broad-based anti-discrimination legislation and residential tenancy laws. Rachel Standen, Win News.
Federal Cabinet today formally approved its controversial Work for the Dole scheme, confirming those who refuse to take part will have their benefits cut. 10,000 unemployed people aged between 18 and 24 will be put to work on a range of community projects.
Officially, Cabinet was to approve details of the Work for the Dole scheme at a meeting in Pakenham, just outside Melbourne. But Training Minister David Kemp had spilled the beans in a radio interview hours earlier.
Most will be voluntary, but where a person who has been required to undertake a scheme refuses to do so, then they would lose their dole.
Cabinet rubber-stamped the plan for up to 70 pilot projects in the first year, starting in September. There would be 2 intakes, each of 5,000 young people, 18 to 20-year-olds working 2 6-hour days a week, those aged 21 to 24 working 3 hours more. Total cost, about $15 million.
We'll be seeking a speedy passage of the legislation. It is in the national interest that the legislation go through quickly.
The bill allowing the government to compel dole recipients to work will be introduced next week.
Would call on Kim Beazley to oppose the legislation.
But Labor, knowing the idea is popular with voters, won't be doing that.
It's too important an issue to play games with. We will reluctantly allow it through.
The government struck another problem today, though, the possibility that the superannuation surcharge on the wealthy in last year's budget is illegal. Dennis Rose, QC, now in private practice, but formerly the top lawyer in the Attorney General's department, told a Senate committee he believes the surcharge breaches the Constitution.
Mr Costello's just had another $1.5 billion hole blown in his budget.
Queensland's biggest cyclone in a decade still sits off the state's north coast, but its effects on land are being felt for hundreds of kilometres. The huge seas and gale-force winds have eroded beaches from Mackay to the Sunshine Coast. A number of houses are also under threat, but while the winds have eased a little in the Whitsundays, forecasters are now saying Cyclone Justin may cross the coast later tonight. The news ahead, Tasmanians awarded for their bravery at a massive pile-up on a British motorway.
See cars being hit, glass going everywhere, slight pieces of cardboard being folded up.
7:30 tonight, join Jo Beth Taylor for Australia's funniest home videos. See all the cute little kids performing for your exclusive entertainment. It's your comedy fix for the week. Funniest home videos followed by the Drew Carey Show from 7:30 tonight on Wen.
So you're saying, Doctor, that going back to work can actually help me get better?
Oh, absolutely, as long as you don't overdo it. Look, I'll have a word to your boss about some alternative duties.
Well, all right, if you think so.
You'll be fine.
Dad, where do you think you're going?
To work. What's it look like?
I thought the doctor said you weren't fit to do your job.
Not my job, no. But he spoke with my supervisor.
Really?
And they reckon I'm okay for other kinds of work.
That's great.
Suits me.
See you later.
Make sure your organisation supports early return to work as part of its workplace health and safety program, because no job is more important.
When the unpredictable happens, it's good to know your boat is insured with TGIO. TGIO. Peace of mind.
god of hellfire!
Classic rock. From Time Life Music. Start with Born to be Wild for the TV offer price of just $9.95. Call 1-300-300-550 now. Then audition other classic rock albums with no obligation to buy. Call 1-300-300-550 now. It's the history of rock, and it's not available in the shops. And when you decide to keep Born to be Wild, we'll send you this great databank calculator free of charge. Call 1-300-300-550 and order the best of rock for only $9.95. That's 1-300-300-550.
Devonport City Council has taken a formal step to initiate discussion on the possibility of creating a super city in the state's northwest to be known as Braddon.
Devonport City Council made the decision last night to commission the investigation into whether the council should support or oppose the radical proposal.
The report that Devonport City Council has called for is looking at it purely from the perspective of Devonport citizens and Devonport ratepayers.
Mayor Squibb has regularly reintroduced the super city issue to public discussion since council amalgamations in the early 1990s.
One council, everybody would be working towards the one objective. And I think, as we've already seen in the first round of rationalisation in Tasmania, there have been some cost savings.
The Braddon super city would take in Devonport, Burnie and Central Coast councils and possibly others in the northwest. Murray Silby, Win News.
There's majority support for a controversial $10 million hotel development proposed for Launceston's Kings Park. A council phone poll suggests 53% of ratepayers are in favour.
The proposed waterfront transformation is one of Launceston's hottest development issues. A telephone survey is adding weight to developers' prospects, but Mayor Alderman John Lee says the support won't bypass the appeal process.
I think it's got a long way to go. I hope it goes ahead. I think that the message is quite clear there now.
I am amazed to think that that many people would be in favour.
35% of opponents' concerns are based on the lack of demand for another hotel, not the site. Meanwhile, council is defending allegations it failed to make public part of a consultant's report recommending the proposed hotel development be abandoned.
It was part of the assessment process that we went through.
Nicole Morrow, Win News.
Launceston's gardens will come under the microscope later this year with the judging of the Spring Garden Competition. Organised by the Horticultural Society, entry forms will be available in April from garden centres. Prizes are awarded for the best home garden as well as commercial gardens. 5 Tasmanian police and ambulance officers involved in the Willow Lane shooting incident almost 2 years ago have been recognised with the awarding of National Bravery commendations.
The Willow Lane incident at Prospect near Launceston in October 1995 saw 4 police wounded during a siege. Sergeant John Shea was the officer in charge of the scene and, while wounded himself, was also the negotiator.
How much trouble am I in? Mate, you're not in a great deal of trouble at all, but the longer it goes, the worse it is.
Sergeant Shea says the Commendation for Brave Conduct Award represents the efforts of all police at the scene that night.
I think I was lucky that all of the police officers that were there were level-headed police officers and did an excellent job.
Constable Terence Rainey has also received a commendation, and Constable Philip Barrett has been awarded the Bravery Medal. 2 other Bravery Medals were also awarded to the ambulance service.
You had people down and who, at the time, we didn't know how badly they were wounded, but we knew they were wounded, so we were asked to go in, we went in.
For the Tasmanian Ambulance Service, I feel very proud. It's recognition that our crews are placed in situations like this on a regular basis.
Awards will be given later this year. Mike Harris, Win News.
4 people are dead and around 60 injured after a massive double pile-up on a British motorway. Altogether, there were 100 cars, trucks and a petrol tanker involved in the collisions on both sides of the highway near Birmingham.
Left-hand side, I can see cars being hit, glass going everywhere. It's like pieces of cardboard being folded up.
Even a police car was caught up in the carnage. The crashes happened in thick fog, and authorities say it was a classic example of people driving too fast in poor visibility. The state's primary school children are facing yet another round of tests of their ability to read and write. Already examined by state authorities, now the federal government wants to get in on the act as it pushes for a national literacy standard.
It was sealed with a magnificent...
The federal government says Australia's education system is failing in classrooms like this, and it wants mandatory literacy tests to ensure that every third grader can read and write.
There's been no improvement in literacy standards.
Dr. Kemp says far too many children leave primary school with appalling literacy skills.
It sets up a vicious cycle of school dropout, misbehaviour, unemployment and long-term unemployment.
He claims billions of dollars in federal education money has been squandered on a system that fails young people.
Dr. Kemp is extremely wrong.
And the Teachers' Union has condemned Canberra's veiled hints of withholding funding unless the states introduce the new test.
It is, however, distasteful to teachers to see the federal minister use children as pawns.
The state government says New South Wales already has Rolls-Royce literacy tests.
If Dr. Kemp wants to adopt a universal literacy test for the whole of Australia, he can't do better than to use the New South Wales test.
What's good about writing?
Well, it's fun.
The people who run classrooms like this one around the country say the federal government's move is nothing short of blackboard blackmail. They say the money that's going to be spent on testing should be spent on improving classroom conditions.
Union concerns about large amounts of asbestos has temporarily suspended work on a building site in the heart of Hobart. Some workers walked off the job this afternoon at the site of a new Target store in the Elizabeth Street Mall. Project managers Labour Constructions acknowledge the asbestos on the site. They are awaiting a report of an independent assessor before proceeding with the planned work. On the stock market, the All Ordinaries gained 6.4. Our dollar is up slightly against the US currency and the yen, but down against the pound. In sport, with Cameron and the Tassie Tigers in the hunt for the Sheffield Shield final, Cam.
You got the fingers crossed, Tom. The Tigers head to Sydney to prepare for a crucial match, and TFL Premier Clarence to take on its VFL counterparts.
A woman murdered, 2 attacked, and no sign of the police for more than an hour. Where were they?
Somebody's head should roll, because isn't that what police are there for?
Plus, disgraced medico Jeffrey Edelston back in business.
Is he going to make you a millionaire?
He's next.
You know, you don't have to suffer the discomfort of sweat, rash and chafing when it gets hot. As a doctor, I know just how uncomfortable that can be for many people. Look, sweat rash often affects the skin between the legs, between the buttocks and below the breasts. So we developed Neat Effect 3B Cream. It prevents that problem before it even starts.
Neat Effect 3B Cream for sweat rash and chafing. Use it and you'll feel the difference.
Good news, better news, the best news. Loughran's cut the cost of living with the single pipe bed and trundle cut to just $179. The double bedroom package, which includes a 4-piece suite, a double mattress and base, plus 7-piece Manchester pack, has all been cut to just $999. And fully guaranteed single bed Mr. Sleepy Slat mattresses have been slashed to only $169. Loughran's cut the cost of living, so grab the catalogue and look sharp.
We're having a sale and it's a big, big sale.
It's a sale that takes place when you want it most, before the season begins.
Come on, it's a great sale. Great sale now, hurry, stop.
Shop at Tiger Super Fun, where you pay less and enjoy it more.
Southern Cross canned fruit, $1.39. Wheat Bix, $2.19. And Bird's Eye peas, $1.09.
Shop at Tiger Super Fun, where there's heaps of cheap specials. Did you know?
Australia's leading hairdressers talk about hair replacement.
I wouldn't hesitate to recommend anybody with a hair loss problem to Advanced Hair Studio.
When you're the best, you go to the best. Australia's #1.
Call 1-800-800-500.
Good evening. The Tasmanian Sheffield Shield team has gone to Sydney a day early to prepare for its crucial final match against New South Wales starting Friday. The Tigers are in the box seat to make the Shield final, but need a win against the Blues to be safe. The Tassie Tigers flew out early today and some players had an unofficial training run this afternoon at the Sydney Cricket Ground. With scores of 10 and 1 in the drawn match against Queensland, opener Dean Hills got in some batting practice, as did Tony Daly. While a win would have booked them a spot in the Shield final, the Tigers were content with the 2 points from the Bulls match, but the big disappointment was the injury to Mark Ridgway, who batted with a runner yesterday and was unable to take the field for the Bulls' second innings.
He's still very stiff and he's having daily treatment. He's back at the team hotel today with Sean Young having some work on some respective sore spots. So, yeah, look, we'll give him every opportunity to be right, even to the morning of the game.
If Ridgway doesn't make it, Paul Hutchison will fill the gap. So it all comes down to the final round of matches, and the stakes are high.
Nothing will change from our angle, and we've just got to back ourselves and play the same sort of cricket, and hopefully the result will go our way.
And in football news, 1996 TFL Premier Clarence will play VFL Premier Springvale in a pre-season match at Bellerive on March 29. It's planned the game will become an annual event between the two leagues' premier teams. Although St Kilda continues its good form in the Ansett Cup, criticism of coach Stan Alves and his men is growing steadily. The club is again teasing its supporters with night success, but is yet to make a serious challenge for the premiership that matters most.
St Kilda is a side that promises so much but continues to frustrate its fans. A win in last year's night grand final against Carlton by 10 goals had expectations bursting, but the form once again fell away dramatically. In the 3 years under Stan Alves, the Saints have not climbed above 10th spot in the regular season. Now the call has gone out.
Look, everybody's under scrutiny from the point of view of what do we need to improve.
Surprisingly, co-captain Nathan Burke is one of those experienced players Alves is looking for to lift even further.
We're certainly aiming for a lot higher finish than we had last year, and we're going about it the right way at the moment by winning games.
It's a mystery where St Kilda will finish this year.
I have very specific goals, but I'm a firm believer that those goals are mine. I don't share them with anybody else.
Meanwhile, the AFL continues to branch out, this time a program to build the game in northern areas of Australia. Part of the $6 million earmarked for junior development will be used to further the chances of Aborigines and Torres Strait Islanders playing at league level. That number has already grown from 13 to 40 in just 6 years.
We actually make sure that everybody gets a fair chance.
Mika Häkkinen today showed the humanitarian side of Formula One racing, a sport where the drivers are known more for their wealth than their generosity. The Finnish driver went back to Adelaide to thank the doctors and nurses who saved his life after a crash in 1995.
It is not lost on the likeable Häkkinen that Sunday's success can be traced directly back to Royal Adelaide Hospital and its staff. His return coincided with the opening of a new heliport.
Because actually it's not that easy to come over here back. First I thought it was easy, but it brings a lot of memories.
Häkkinen remembers the moments before crashing at 300 kilometres an hour. But for weeks later, life was a blur. Today, he paid tribute to those who nursed him back to health. And judging by the crowd, the Finn must have been a model patient.
I want to thank you for the few people who helped me here in 95.
If you think our own Darryl Eastlake is an emotional commentator, try this. English radio soccer caller Stuart Mack became so upset at seeing his beloved Swindon being trashed 7-0 by Bolton, he broke down and cried.
Oh, I suppose everyone wonders why I got tears in my eyes.
Trying to think of something else, even a row with the wife or anything, but I just couldn't, and I just couldn't hold back, and it just really did hit me.
Burnie Tenpin bowler Matthew Riley has been rewarded for several years' persistence by being named in the Australian under-23 side for the Asian Youth Championships in July.
In 1994, Matthew Riley set his targets on selection in the Australian under-23 team. It's taken him 3 years to achieve that goal, but at 19 years of age, he's still ahead of schedule.
I've applied for the youth team twice. Last year I got reserve, and this year I got in, so it's all going well.
The recognition by Australian selectors begins a hectic schedule for Riley, with a Melbourne tournament at Easter and Darwin warm-up event in May, before flying to the Philippines for the youth titles in July.
It's a great thrill for me to bowl against the big boys over in Manila.
a best individual performance at the Australian Senior Teams Championships, securing his selection. Murray Silby, Win News.
And that's all in sport. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Cam. We'll take a break now, then Wendy with the weather.
8 o'clock tonight.
I see you got a Bible here. Well, let me save you a little reading. You're going to hell.
Drew's turning to God.
Turn the other cheek. Well, I hope we're not talking about your butt, because I don't have all day.
The Drew Carey Show, 8 o'clock tonight on Win.
Roy looked like he had something on his mind.
Coffee?
Thanks. And a cup of Nescafe certainly helped the words come out.
Marry me?
Memories came flooding back as I sipped my coffee. And I realized that whilst Roy and the Valley were my future, there was one part of my life I had to deal with. I can't. I need time.
Introducing new Bird's Eye... Introducing new Bird's Eye Crunchy Potato Fish... Introducing new Bird's Eye Crunchy Potato Fish Fillets. Delicious white flaky fish fillets inside, crunchy potato crumbs outside.
Go on, Mum.
The best range, the best brands, the best prices on Easter eggs and novelties are available at all Rolf Voss supermarkets. Look at these for great value specials. 1 kilogram Rinso, $1.87. 150-gram Nescafe coffee, $4.97. Thorburn 6 for 5 bonus pack toilet rolls, $3.75. 500-gram cottage jams, $1.99. 1.25 litre Coke range, $1.37. Blue Ribbon middle bacon, $7.49 a kilo. Thompson seedless grapes, $2.49 a kilo. And rump steak, $5.85 a kilo. Easter Wonderland of savings, now on at all Rolf Voss supermarkets.
Bejan's sensational sale is on now. Sanyo electronic microwave oven, $159. Liberty 3-piece lounge suite, $12.99, save $200. And Fisher & Paykel washer, $749. Bejan's, best advice, best price.
Tonight's weather is brought to you by TGIO, where your house and contents insurance covers you if you cause a visitor to your home to have an accident.
Good evening. After some morning fog patches, it was fine and mostly sunny over the state today with light northerlies. Top temperatures were at Milton, Mowbray, Bushy Park and Hobart, all sharing 24 degrees. Burnie 19, Devonport 20, Launceston 10 to 22, St Helens 23 and Queenstown 21. There's a frontal band over the south moving to the east, which is expected to cross tonight with tropical cyclone Justin still hovering off the Queensland coast. There's a high over the Tasman with a cold front south of the Bight. So for tomorrow, a few showers with a cooler westerly change and the chance of some highland snow in the west, believe it or not. For the west and south, there's a strong wind warning with winds gradually turning northwest to westerly during the day at 20 to 30 in the west, 25 to 35 in the south and possibly 40 knots at times in the southwest. For the east, northerlies locally 25 knots ahead of a change, and the north, winds turning northwest to southwesterly at 15 to 25 during the day. To the major centres now, and there's a few showers on the way. Hobart 14 to 20, Launceston 12 to 22, Burnie and Devonport 13 to around 19. Mainly fine in the east with 22 for St Helens and Swansea, and some showers for Strawn with 17. To the capitals now, and a few showers for Melbourne 22, Sydney fine 26, Brisbane a shower or two 27 and Perth fine and 26. Showers easing for Thursday, Friday a shower or two with a fine day for Saturday. Now it's back to you, Tom.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Sightseers got more than they bargained for today when a Canadian aircraft waterbombed the face of Mount Nelson. The amphibious firefighting aircraft has been described as the most effective firefighting tool for bushfires. It's capable of scooping 6,000 litres of water and with pinpoint accuracy dousing flames during a low-level bombing run. On Win News tonight, Trust Bank details plans for a public float with state government backing. A 23-year-old Triabunna man found guilty of attempted murder, and Tasmania's police commissioner tells why police did not shoot Martin Bryant. Well, take good care. We'll see you again tomorrow night. Good night.